Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Be Amazing podcast. I am Cel, and today I am here with two of my favorite people, I have to say, is Terrie Reeves. Hey, Terrie. And Jonathan Fisher,
Yep.
Dr. Jonathan Fisher, I should say. So glad that you guys came on today, and we're talking about awakening the heart and what that really means. How y'all are defining that. You have created an event around it. Dr. Jonathan is a cardiologist. He has also written a book, which is called Just One Heart. He is organizational well-being and resilience leader. Terrie Reeves is not only my friend and has been on this podcast many times before. She's well-known in Charlotte for her inspiration and love of helping others, just overall well-being. She is the founder of Empower Health America. She is a social scientist, a consultant, a coach, a trainer, a facilitator of empowerment programs, workshops, and retreats. And she's the creator of the 5P Change model. So thank you both so much for taking time today, because I think this topic, what y'all are doing now, is very relevant. People are looking for ways to lessen stress, to be more open, and just more than just fitness. It's no longer about your body just being in shape. It's about your mind. It's your spirit. It's like connecting all the dots. So I really want to dive into the conversation. And Jonathan, I'm going to start with you. You often mention that you cared for 20,000 other hearts before learning to care for your own. How did this shift happen for you, and what lessons can you offer others that you've learned from that experience?
I was very much a typical medical student. I was gung-ho. I wanted to help people. I wanted to use my brain to store all this knowledge. And then people would come to me saying, my chest hurts, I can't breathe, I'm having palpitations. And I would know exactly what to do. And I followed that model for a while. I mean, by a while, I mean a dozen years. What I wasn't taught in medical school was that it takes its toll. It takes its toll on you when every day, day after day, you're seeing 2,000 to 3,000 patients every year who are coming with sometimes life and death situations. There's a special type of a work that doctors and nurses and people who work in the allied fields deal with, this emotional labor of helping other people in pain, whether it's coming from a place of trauma or just going from good to great. And I never knew how hard it was going to be for me. On top of that, or beneath that, we should say, I was a very anxious kid, and that anxiety eventually led to depression. So you can imagine these two parallel tracks. You have this really curious kid who did well in school, worked his butt off to go to Harvard, felt like he didn't belong there because he thought everyone else was smarter, and then my heart started to erode, is the only way I can say it. I was giving so much to others. I was confused myself. I was so busy and stuck up in my brain that there was this huge disconnect until things hit bottom. And it's a long story how things hit bottom. You asked me, when did things turn around? They turned around when they hit bottom, when I was curled up in a ball of my New York City apartment with my then new wife 20 years ago rather, looking over me, saying, what are we going to do to come back from this dark, dark place? And fortunately, I had a lot of people who loved me and who gave me hope that there was a way forward. And I started studying mindfulness, meditation, yoga, tai chi, qigong, positive psychology, you name it. I was desperate. And so I had this secret parallel path that I never got in medical school. And I started to share it with other doctors and my patients. I was healing my own heart as I was opening myself to my patients, and they were experiencing greater healing themselves. And that's the story of how I'm talking with you right now.
It's very powerful, because we always think, I think a lot of times people think of separation between the physical body and your mental health. They don't really connect it. And this happened to me I think it was last year. And I've always been in yoga. Terrie knows this. I go take her classes and have always used yoga for the physical side. Never paid attention to the meditation side or anything like that. Didn't connect that dot at all. So when you're in class and they're like, breathe and I'm like, no, I'm in it for the physical. Well, last year I had a lot of stress. It came from just, external things, family. There was just a lot of things happening in my life, and it caused additional stress. And I was laying in bed one night, And I can remember my heart started racing and it was pounding out of my chest. My mind was like going 100 miles an hour. And all I could remember, and these are the seeds of all the yoga classes, breathe. And I remember getting a hold of that connection of like, I just started to breathe and I took deep inhale and exhale and was able to bring myself down and slow my heart rate back down. And that for me was the first moment that it was like, oh, this is what they mean by meditation and breathing. And I tried it 2 other times. One, when I was speaking on stage, I was like, before I had to go up, you get butterflies and all nervous. And I tapped into breathing and was able to bring myself to a calm state. And I was like, this is really working. So for me, that's become even more personal. And that's why this conversation is so important, because you really are connecting that dot between the physical and the mental. So Terrie, this goes into power of the pause, because this has been your mantra. We've talked about this for years. You share about it in your classes constantly. What inspired that for you?
So, yeah, you go way back, right? We're a sum total of everything we've encountered in our lives. And much like Jonathan, if you looked at my bio, you'd say, oh, Terrie's had just this fabulous trajectory forward, but you get underneath the iceberg and you get a little bit more clarity on where the drive came from. And, unfortunately, mine was driven by fear, which is now shifted to faith and hope. Thank goodness. But when I was young, and a little bit of my story, Cel, my parents got married when they were 17 and 18, had me when they were 19, and divorced when I was 4, and they both were with 3 other people. So that's a total of 6. And so I kind of went back and forth, and you're in 9 different schools growing up. So you really don't have a lot of stability. And at a young age, I mean, who teaches you to breathe and pause and check in and listen to your heart and just be in a space of compassion? So you're just sort of doing the best you can. And I think I started running faster, coping in unhealthy ways, developing some patterns of behavior that were not serving my higher good. And that went on for years and years and years. And I think my turning point was in college. I'd become so anxious and carrying so much stress, which leads to depression, burnout. I mean, it's a slippery slope. And I finally found running. And running somehow was an elixir for me to find movement as a way to cope with anxiety. But you have to cope at a deeper level. That was a physical opportunity, which serotonin, dopamine, all the things that happen, which are great, but I still needed to get underneath the surface deeper to figure out what was at the root of the problem. And, it's not just one thing, it's an aggregation of it all. The great news is that you can learn skills. And much like you said, Cel, it's not just exercise, but it's holistically, how can I take care of my mind, my body, and my heart? And so I exercise to this day. I love to dance. I love to move. It's my happy place. But I've learned the importance of pausing. And so there is power in the pause. And, therapy, positive psychology, reading books, talking to friends, faith, all the things that we do to gain more knowledge around how we can practice self-care. But for me, power in the pause sits at the foundation of all of it, because you have to get still. You have to check out to check in. And we have to drop out of our heads and become really aware of what's happening in the most important home on the planet, and that is our body. And this is the most powerful instrument we have, is our heart. And so, I talk about the pause, Jonathan talks about the heart, but in fact, those two things are greatly united, because we can't hear the desires of the heart when we're moving so quickly. And the stillness, I think, is what allows us to tap into our greatest resource. So it's like superpowers unite from different perspectives, but very much parallel and united, because both of those things are critically important to get this to this space of calm. And then we can be clearer to maybe drop in deeper and ponder more and connect, on a higher vibration, because we're not letting our heads boss us around. And it's just, to me, it what anchors me at the end of the day, the mantra that brings you back to that space that's so critically important is power in the pause. So, you asked, or Jonathan, I think you and I have been talking a little bit about the motivation of what your life's work is about. And, we're not, what's the best way to say this? We are not a product of our childhood, but we can be inspired by it and motivated by it. So how do you turn the challenges into hope, and how might you take this hope to other people? And I think we very much share, how can I be of service to the world? And how can I use my story and my own knowledge to have more compassion? And then how can I speak from a place that's accessible, right? How can I help people, like grassroots, really learn ways to pause and to tap in? So long-winded story, but it's amazing. You look back and that reflection's powerful. Why do I do what I do today? And I'm very happy that this is my life's work.
Well, I do love this so much because as you're talking, and I just told you a little bit about what I went through with learning how to breathe. With the breathing, that's where it allowed me to pause.
Yeah.
In one other scenario I had a really stressful phone call to make, and normally I would pick up the phone, immediately call, because I'm functioning off of like that high level stress. And it was like, power in the pause is a real thing. It was the pause, it was the breathing, and then I was able to calmly make that call. So that really brings me to this whole thing, Jonathan, and I want you to kind of share more about it, with the heart and the mind connection. Like, that's something that you talk about and you believe in. How does that work in real life experience? I shared a little bit of my story, not even knowing that maybe that's what it is, but like, give us a little bit more depth about that.
Your story describes it perfectly. Everything you have to know is there, and you could spend a lifetime studying this mind-heart connection. Or, as I recently have shifted a little bit, even the word connection, mind-heart connection, suggests that there are ways that they're not connected, and that's not the case. So there's almost this concept of mind-heart unity. And I think that that's a very powerful way to realize that what we feel in our emotional heart, which is we think is up in our brain, it's not. We don't experience feelings without the sensations that are happening in our chest. It's part of how the heart evolved, not just to pump blood, but to tell our body what's going on around us. Is it important? Is it not? Should we move away? Should we move towards? And that's a higher level of wisdom that can guide us towards better decisions. For me, the nerdy part of me, when I wrote my book, wanted to go through the whole history of this mind-heart unity concept. And my editor said, leave that out. Nobody wants to hear that. It's too much. And so guess what chapter 1 is all about? It's all about the ancient Chinese and the ancient Indian cultures and ancient Egyptians and ancient Greeks and Romans, and on and on and on and on and on. And the Incans and the Mayans, every world wisdom culture knew that any separation between what we're thinking and what feelings eventually come up, there's no separation. And yes, we have modern psychologists, William James 100 years ago, who said, well, our thoughts lead to our feelings and our feelings lead to our behaviors. And every coach in the world knows this. But this is wisdom that goes back more than 3,000 years. This is the mind-heart unity. And on a very practical level, Cel, the reason when you're in bed and you're feeling that anxiety and that panic, and then your heart starts beating out of your chest, and if you're lucky, you discover the breath practice. If you're not, you end up in my office. And I see people every day who have no idea what's going on, and I explain it. And there's really 3 simple ways that your mind is talking to your heart, and your heart is talking back. And sometimes, this is the neat part, sometimes your heart is starting the conversation and your mind is responding. And the first way is all this activity in the brain. So there's these dozen different areas in the brain that get active or quiet depending on what emotions we're feeling, whether it's fear on the one hand that Terrie was talking about, or compassion on the other hand. When we're in love, experiencing those warm and fuzzies, there's a flood of electrical activity, chemicals. The next step is that they then trickle down and do what they're designed to do, which is activate parts of the body. They make your pupils dilate or constrict. You breathe faster. Stomach acid comes out or decreases. Your blood vessels constrict or relax. and your heart goes faster, slower, contracted, not contracted. And then the third way, which is really the part that coaches end up dealing with, ignoring the first two, is our emotions, our panic, our anxiety, our fear. Whether we're conscious of it or not, it affects our behavior. And that's where a lot of the coaching work happens is, well, what choices am I making? Am I choosing to go to that talk that Cel's about to give that's going to help me be more healthy and well? Am I going to go to that program that Terrie's leading that's going to show me how to get in touch with my mind and my body? Or am I going to ignore it and go, like I so often do and did more in the past, get that chocolate chip ice cream and sit and watch Netflix for 10 hours? So that is the power of the mind-heart connection. And the more we understand how that conversation is happening, the more access points we have to take control of our health and wellness.
It's this to me is like, I think timing is everything. And I think even having my own heart and mind prepared for this conversation, because this is something that I've actually been implementing, like the whole pause and the breathing, and really understanding that there is a connection between the mind and the heart. Terrie, talk a little bit more about why the pause is so important. Like, why is that important for us to do that? And, you know, what other simple ways can we do that? Is it as simple? Because I think a lot of times, here's what I think happens a lot. I know for me, when people started talking about meditation and they started getting into all that, it starts to become overwhelming. And because it's like, you're thinking about all the, you know, I got to do all these things. I got to sit on a yoga mat, and I've got to like shut the noise out, and I got to make sure it's a dark, a low light space, all these external things. And I think it's a lot more simple than that. And Terrie, because you are in the yoga, this is like your jam, like, yeah, like make this a little bit more simple, because I know I know if I'm feeling that way and I'm in the fitness and health wellness space, I'm sure there's other people that are like, how simple is this? And how do I practice this? And do I have to, be in a certain space to do it?
How many hours do we have? So yes, being in the yoga space and practicing the pause and practicing breathing does get easier, right? Mastery takes a while. If you take your non-dominant hand and try to write your name with it, it probably is not going to be easy. But you do that for 30 days and you've probably gotten that pretty perfected. And so I give hope by sharing that analogy, because just because you can't sit still for a minute or 2 minutes and breathe right out of the gate doesn't mean it's not possible. And honestly, most things worth working towards do take a little bit of effort. And it's not in our nature, because we're 24/7 plugged in to technology 7 hours a day. We're on average in some way connected to technology. We can't hold focus more than 8.5 seconds. It used to be 12 and 10 years ago. So our attention span is diminishing, and 50% of the people in the United States say they suffer from some level of pretty significant depression. And so it's a no wonder that Jonathan sees a lot of people who are coming in clenching their heart, right? So I say all that just to kind of say, we're not living in an environment that makes it really conducive to pause. And as a result, we're not a really super healthy culture in a lot of ways, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, socially, all the different holistic ways. So it's a really important thing for us to be proactive, to pay attention to, and to try to get better at. And I'll talk about it from two perspectives. One is we get triggered all day long by different things, and we have different coping skills, some good, some not so good. And we go into the geek side of me. Jonathan mentioned that word is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And those are default behaviors. We might go get Haagen-Dazs ice cream. We might flight to Ben and Jerry's, right? But these aren't necessarily serving our higher good. So if we want to recreate, patterns and change our neural pathways, we have to first pause and decide we want to, that there's awareness that we need to. And so if there's an awareness fueled by an intrinsic motivation, like I want my life to be healthier, not because somebody's telling me to, but because I want to, it can start with just simply pausing when you're triggered, right? Breathing for 1 to 2 minutes, 6 to 10 deep breaths will help you regulate. The frontal cortex is like gone offline, the amygdala's cranking up, and that's danger, danger, warning, warning. Well, you can bring this computer, which is where logic happens, the frontal cortex, back online just by breathing 1 to 2 minutes. It doesn't even take that long. And if you know that that's happening, even if you have ADD, there's a motivation to stay there, to keep breathing, to keep breathing. Then the proactive pause is like, maybe I get up in the morning and before I jump out of bed, I spend 2 minutes just breathing, visualizing the day that I want to have. And to Jonathan's point, we think the head is what's like in charge. And often it does feel like the head's bossing us around because we default to headspace thinking and we go straight to the to-do list. So if we can literally, even just a body scan, I mean, be kind to this home and go, okay, I've got a lot of stuff to do out there, but I've got some real homework and some discovery to do right here. And to breathe and just scan and notice the language of the body sensation. Notice the feelings in the heart. I mean, I think, and Jonathan would probably be able to give you a lot more science about this than I can, but I've read so often that the heart is telling the mind more than the mind is actually telling the heart. We just aren't tapping into it, and we can't unless we pause. And so to physically feel this visceral connection gives us so much information and wisdom so that we can begin to move through the day with greater awareness. And that awareness leads to better intentional action. So if we know we're tired, we know we're sad, and it's not usually one emotion, it's a myriad of emotions. How can I have more compassion for myself today? What actions might I take to align with what I need so that I can show up in the world a better human for myself, my family, my coworkers in the world? And so we talk about this little word called pause and this 2-minute investment and the ripple and the cascade of learning how to do that with intention, both when triggered and proactively when not, is a life changer, is an absolute life changer. So that was my quickest way to respond to that question.
Well, I mean, it's so, again, like, I can't say it enough, like, because I've now experienced this just and like I said, the seeds were planted over the years with the yoga and being around people that are like yourself, that are focused on taking time and meditation. And I think that that's for somebody that's just struggling. And even if they start and it doesn't happen for them right away. Like, it's like anything, you have to just keep showing up, like just keep showing up for yourself and take those 2 minutes or 3 minutes daily and just create that habit. And I think eventually, I'm saying this, I think eventually it's like a Rubik's Cube. Eventually it clicks when all the pieces are aligned. But I think it does take I know for me, it took a little bit of time to realize the connection. But I really want to talk about now, like, now that you've kind of set the stage for the mind-heart connection, you all have created a retreat. And Jonathan, this question is for you because you two are like dynamos in your own way. You're both powerful. You both love and have a heart for community and for people to be well and live well. And how did you guys come together to create this retreat? Oh, there you are.
It's helped. So I just unmuted myself. Someone recently wrote a book called Unmuted, and I think it's a cool concept. We should all unmute ourselves, let our full voice come out into the world, express ourselves, right?
Yes.
We're doing it. We were introduced by a common, wonderful friend, Charlton Alicia, years ago. Terrie knows him through dance. He has done my hair for years and even did it yesterday. Thanks, Cha-Cha.
It looks amazing. I was wondering, I was like, your hair looks fantastic.
Of course it does. Of course it does. He's like partly does my hair. He also is my therapist. It's awesome.
Worth the money. Worth the money.
Yes. So we were introduced years ago, and I saw Terrie up on the stage and dancing with the stars and doing all this fundraiser and supporting breast cancer and supporting thousands of women in Charlotte. And I'm here just kind of doing my job, working at the hospital, and very small. And I'm thinking, this is incredible impact. This is a human being with heart who's taken her own history, her own story, and has transformed it like magic to help so many people. And I kind of wanted to be a part of Terrie's world. So we met years ago and we had Terry, I don't know if you remember this. We met downtown and we had coffee, and then we had, lunch. And I was like, oh my gosh, you came out with like this textbook that you had written on, how do you coach people through transitions and this framework and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, I have my iPhone, I have some notes. So, so Cel, Terry, you know what a dynamo she is, just a powerhouse, and everybody admires the work she does. And so we talked about, he said, someday maybe the opportunity will come where we can work together. And then COVID happened, and then we each, continued, Terry continued to lead her retreats. I started to do what my dream was, which was to help organizations and teams in various ways, doing keynotes and retreats in Western North Carolina and elsewhere. And it occurred to me, we need one in Charlotte. When's the last time when someone had a big retreat in Charlotte? And so Terry was my first text message, and I thought she'd be like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Instead, she's like, I don't know what you're asking, but my answer is yes. And and the idea behind it was, we cannot wake up to our lives using one vantage point alone. I can come at the approach to health and healing as a medical scientist, as a physician, as a specialist in heart disease and prevention, and that's not enough. That's not enough. I need to learn, and I have learned just a little bit with my 200 hours of yoga training over the last decade, and 10,000 hours of meditation, and going to England and Oxford to learn to become a meditation teacher. That's how important this is to my patients, and I bring it to my patients. And yet I wanted to go straight to the source, someone who really is an expert in the somatic experience and how it ties into the mind and the heart. And that, for me, that's Terry. So that's what began this conversation about creating a powerful retreat for our Charlotte community.
I love this because I feel the same way about Terry, as far as like we've always supported each other. It's that person that you just know, because you function, you flow with your heart. Like you're connected by the heart. And she is very much that way. And she's I guess in my circle, she's that person. She's a point person I know that I could call about anything. And I also know that, like, if it's something about community, if it's something to help people, there's not even a question. If she calls me, I'm like, yeah, I mean, what do you need me to do? Like, what are we doing? What's next? What are we going to do to help? And so I love that. I love the fact that you're coming from medicine, because I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say negative, but there's a lot of like just a view of what a doctor is. And like, you just have like, I think stigma might be the wrong word too, but just like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. Like, in a lot of aspects of you having this compassion beyond helping somebody physically, like there's something deeper there. And so for the two of you to come together, it just like the alignment is amazing. And I can't wait to share this, because I feel like there are so many companies that are looking for this kind of thing to be brought to their employees. There are so many people suffering from depression, suffering from anxiety, suffering from just the weight of life. And so I feel like you're bringing about something that each person has and how they can tap into it. And with that said, Terry, I want your perspective, because I know, like, we met, when you introduced me to Dr. Jonathan, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is a big deal. He's a cardiologist. Like, what? So, I mean, I'm like, I'm talking to him and I'm not in his office. Like, what is happening? But talk about your perspective of working with him, because this kind of, to me, this like fills out like that other part of everything that you've been working on for so many years.
Yeah. I need to jump into this love fest. And at first, I'm humbled by what you just shared, the two of you. And so I love the work that I get to do, and I'm just glad that it's registering in the world in a way that's meaningful. So I appreciate the kindness. And my little heart lit up a lot, quite big it got. So Jonathan did text me. And he said, would you be interested in doing a retreat? And of course, I almost dropped the phone because it's Jonathan Fisher. And we did meet. All of what he said is true. And I have just been, you know, how you admire people from afar. You're not in their world every day, but you look at the work that they're doing in the world and you're inspired. And Jonathan has inspired me since the first moment I sat down and talked to him. And I've seen him very methodically, very intentionally, and very mindfully and heart driven pursue this, what I would consider a dual path, is how might I be a doctor and provide science and medicine and sort of the Western side of things that really help us, right? Surgeries and practical application of medications and all the things that we learn from Western modalities and Western science and medicine. And what I love is the Eastern modalities and sort of that Eastern philosophy is creeping in, and that has been becoming more ever present. And Jonathan is a pioneer that is leading the charge in that. And that union is so much more powerful. It's not either or, it's both and. And Jonathan is miraculously and beautifully and powerfully reshaping the way we think about science and the medical way in which we treat people. We are humanizing, I think, medicine. We are realizing that we are human beings. We're not just functioning systems. And it is just, I am so in awe and so inspired, and so inspired that I am actually writing a book now called Power in the Pause. And it is because of Jonathan Fisher, because I watched
Oh,
his
great.
ability to make this happen. And I'm like, okay, I am going to do this. I'm not going to pause any longer, right? And I kind of make a joke. I might have a shitty first draft, and there might be 9 or 10 or 15 iterations, but I am on that journey. And so, speaking of the journey, Jonathan, when we started talking about how can we bridge the gap, he talks to patients. You know, I talk to yogis, I talk to a lot of people I coach in the private sector, but I also have a huge desire to impact corporate America. How might we create this change in corporate America so we are humanizing our employees? And we think about stress and we think about depression and we think about burnout, we think of impact in organizations on, you know, healthcare costs, productivity, presenteeism, absenteeism, focus. I mean, all the things that we know, just helping people feel better about working for a company, more inspired, you know, not a lot of turnover because they actually like the culture they live in. And so if we don't have a heart-centric culture, I think we're missing fundamentally what needs to be at the foundation, because the heart doesn't run out of gas. Goals, those extrinsic motivators can be inspiring, but the piece that really drives us deep in our soul is our heart. So I too am very steeped in, you know, mindfulness training and certified coach and all that stuff. And I feel like I can bring all the tactical knowledge and I can help people through the change process, but without the heart at the center of it. I think that the kind of be like New Year's resolutions. I got this for 30 days and then it kind of, you know, it wanes. And so I think the heart is at the center of what is going to pump our lives into a greater universe.
Mm.
Companies to a higher vibration, more productivity, healthier employees, happier employees. And I think as individuals, if we can tap into our hearts, we will move ourselves to a healthier, happier existence for ourselves and everybody we love around us. So yes, and Cel Smart, you're not getting away without me complimenting you, Missy. I'm sitting here watching the way you're conducting this interview, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, she is so driven from her heart. She is so passionate. And there's a word in yoga called dharma, and it's when your purpose and your passion align. And when you do that, you don't run out of gas.
Mhm.
You've been doing this podcast, I mean, going on 2 years. I mean,
It's been since 2020, so it's 4 years.
4 years. Could you
Hmm.
see? And you talk about commitment and it's paying off. You know, and a little bit of this COVID, despite the fact it created
Hmm.
disruption in the world, it cracked it open that we need to have a little bit more humanity. So this global pause, I think, helped us do a bit more introspection as a society and as a whole. I think we're moving forward more enlightened. So, I mean, clearly this is a reflection of
Come
something
on.
that you believe in, that's holding space for people to tell their story. And it's a powerful way to to encourage others is through storytelling. So
Yeah, that's been the biggest thing is it's been a heart project. Like it's been from the heart. It's, it's a platform used where people get to share and inspire others because we live in communities where we don't know what each other, you don't know what the person in your community, there may be somebody that's hidden out like a hidden diamond and they've been through something and they've learned something. And then to have a platform where they can share it. That's been the goal of this whole thing. And it started out with a focus on women and then it's opened up to be more than that. So we've had men on and people from different sides of not just Charlotte, but nationally. And so I don't know where it's all going to go, but like this for me was like the two of you, because of what you've come together to do, what you've created, who you are as individuals and what you have to say that can change somebody's life. And with the retreat, what can people expect? So let's first say the date of the retreat. Let's get that. I want to make sure that gets out there. So when's the retreat?
February 8th. February 8th from between 8 and 12:30 at Trinity Church in Charlotte.
Okay. What can someone expect? Like when they walk away, what is your goal for them? Like what is the takeaway?
Terrie, do you want to?
you lead, and then I'll add on.
It's going to be hard to describe. From the moment that they walk into the retreat, they're going to feel the type of space that is a healing space, that's an empowering space. And we're very intentional about that. This is not going to be at the Motel 6 where you walk in and you have some cheap coffee there. We've planned the whole thing out, the entire thing, and we've invited, it's important to say, two incredible leaders to pick up even more unique threads, helping people awaken their hearts. We have Kate Ciano, who works at Lyra Health. She's a mental health expert. She's a master coach and an all-around amazing human being who's going to help access the vibrational qualities of the heart by teaching us to use our voices and express ourselves and open up. And also, we have Scott Greenapple, who's a pioneer in traditional Chinese medicine, Tai Chi, Qigong, who's going to share with us the role of the heart, even in traditional Chinese medicine, and going to share with us how to use our bodies. Well, Terrie she can share with you all the secrets she's going to be sharing. I'm going to frame sort of the science piece of it and the relevance here and the crisis that we're facing in our hearts, not just in Charlotte, but in the world right now, in these four dimensions of the human heart in crisis, which you alluded to, the physical, 18 million deaths by heart disease every year. What are we doing about this? 80% of heart disease could be prevented, and we're not doing it because we're missing the mark. We're going to try and fill in some of those gaps. We've got the emotional heart, untreated depression in 75% of people, anxiety, low-level stress. People don't have the basic tools. We're going to be speaking about that. The third dimension of the heart is the social dimension. The epidemic of loneliness is really what's driving us back to these screens because we're desperate for connection and we're not finding it. We're filling that void in other ways. So we're going to be speaking about the social connection. And then ultimately, there's this spiritual dimension of the heart, which is not spiritual in any religious sense. It's spiritual simply in the sense, as Terrie was talking, the word dharma. It's when your passion meets your purpose. It's when we go beyond our narrow concern for this little me, mine, and we look at the community and we look at the world around and say, how can I serve? What is my place in the world and in this life? We find that when we connect with that sense of purpose, a lot of these other challenges we face tend to take care of themselves. So that's what people can expect, is to feel an integrity, a new integrity in their hearts from when they walk in to when they walk out in these four dimensions of the human heart. And we're going to be talking about the 7 timeless traits of the heart. People are going to develop more wisdom, more courage. Now, I don't want to overpromise here. I understand the way that these things work. And at the same time, unless I believed that Terrie and I could create this event and create this impact, I wouldn't have started in the first place. If you're going to do something, you do it well and you create an impact. So the impact is we want to leave a lasting impact on the Charlotte community where people come back for more and they say, how do we share this with others?
Yeah. And such a beautiful description of the experience, right? We even struggle. Do we call this an event? That seems so tactical and cold. Workshop, that seems so clinical and heady. And like, it's going to be an experience. And, you know, these experiential ways to help people light up their heart, to move their body, to bring their minds to more clarity, and to do that not just by talking to them, but having people actually engaged in experiencing. And we feel like learning happens not when we're told what to do, but when we actually get to do it, we experience it ourselves. So this ability to take some practices and feel the impact in the moment and leave with practical ways that you can integrate this into your life long after the, you know, the experience of the day is over. I'm going to be ending us with sound healing, which is a way to drop in really deeply and allow space for everything to sort of resonate and marinate. And we'll do some journaling. Certainly, as Jonathan mentioned, Scott and Kate are extraordinary humans. And I think all four of us realize we are far more powerful together than we are individually. And so this selection of the team was done with great intention. And I feel like it's going to be a very full experience because everybody's bringing sort of their unique expertise to the table, but wrapping it around the heart. And of course, we have to make time as humans to pause and come to the retreat in order to experience how your heart will get lit up. So pausing is about not necessarily doing nothing, it's intentionally doing something with great focus. And I do hope people will pause and make time. The most important gift we can give ourselves is a gift of health. And it'll certainly be, those fingerprints will be all over the retreat for sure.
So is this for more, so are you, because because I know this might come up for some people, is this for anyone and everyone? Is this for employers that might want to send teams? Like, who is this designed for?
Yeah, we had several groups in mind. The first is anyone interested in improving their own well-being in all dimensions, not someone who just wants to do some yoga poses. And by the way, this is not going to be like sweaty yoga where you need to be an athlete. This is designed for anybody. This is trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive, people who have all sorts of backgrounds. Just some gentle movement to tap into your body. It's not the, you know, the 108-degree yoga that I can't stand.
Hot, fast, and hard.
It's not fast and hard.
Will
No,
not be that.
no. This is more gentle. So number one, the first group is people who are interested in improving their own well-being and wellness, mentally, physically, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. It's also for employers and teams in Charlotte who want to come and experience what it's like as a team, as a community, to look at their lives and to literally awaken their hearts in all these different dimensions. Those are kind of the two crowds we're looking at. And then it's also meant for anyone who's in the healing space. Maybe you're somebody who's a nurse and you're a trauma nurse and you've experienced too much of it yourself, the secondary stress, and you don't know what to do with it. We're going to be tapping into talking about empathy, talking about vicarious stress, talking about compassion fatigue. Whether you're a single mother and you just feel like you can't give anymore, it's going to be about how do you give back to yourself? How do you regulate those emotions so you can continue to be that healing container for others?
Healing container for others. Oh, that's so well said. And Steele, I will tell you, because I'm handling the back end of this workshop, I see the demographics, and we're right now tracking at an age of 27 to 74.
Wow.
And the beauty of people coming together and having a like-minded experience and all being able to participate in every ounce of it, that's our goal. Nothing is going to be out of reach for people to experience something extraordinary. So I think it's a good question. We even asked if there's any disabilities. We're going to make space for anybody who just wants to be in this environment, learning and healing and moving and experiencing something very powerful together in community.
Well, I think this is an incredible opportunity for the community of Charlotte, and just the gift of it, of what you're doing, I think is huge. I think the time of year is important. It's definitely during Heart Month, February. So it just all aligns. Where can they go to register? So give us all of that information.
Yeah. So Terrie Reeves, Terrie, Reeves, Ree, V as in victory, ES, terriereeves.com. It's also empowerhealth.com, but Terrie Reeves is probably easier. And you can go top nav button and just hit events, and it'll show Awaken the Heart. So it's just one click away. Also, if people want to reach out, I'm T Reeves, Reeves, Reeves at ehamerica.com. Definitely would welcome a conversation with an individual or a company. Clearly interested in getting this out to as many people as we can. We've been marketing it on LinkedIn, and then, of course, Instagram and Facebook. So you might see us out there. Hit DM, all the stuff, all the words we're using now to communicate in the social media space. And Jonathan, I don't want to give your information, but I certainly will turn it over to you to let you share in that space.
That's perfect. Mine is easy. If you follow me anywhere on social media, it's Happy Heart MD, because we all want to have happy hearts in every way. So Happy Heart MD, mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram, and you'll find out more details about the retreat in my last few weeks of posting.
And I'll be sharing this podcast episode. We'll probably get this out. We'll get it out this week for sure. I'll be dropping the links and sharing it on all platforms. But I just can't say enough of how inspiring this conversation has been for me, and how timely, and I just believe this is going to be a beautiful experience for anyone that takes the time to pause and join you for this heart-filled, heart-mind connection, beautiful community experience. So I just want to thank you both for taking time today to share about it, and to help us. It's so good to hear from people that you're coming to this with the science, you're coming to this with the emotion, all the things. And so I feel like the toolkit and the tool bag that you have is amazing. And more than anything, the people that you are, because you're so genuine, and it just y'all both beam. So I mean, it's just you just shine. You want to be around good vibes, and you want to be around people that are going to uplift you and encourage you and inspire you. And yes,
I
just
love
vibes.
that. And I have a pause cup, but I don't have it.
So I want to say thank you to the listeners. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please share it. I share it with anyone and everyone. And stay tuned for more. But you can follow us, The Amazing Podcast. We are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, and we are now on YouTube. So we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Cel.
Thanks, Cel.